There is this encampment at the University of Washington, and it's just the same old cast of characters. It's the people who protest capitalism during Occupy. It's the people who protest the police during the summer of 2020. And now they're like, wow, we found something else that we can do with our lonely, sad time. And we're going to go to the campus of the University of Washington, and we're going to tell Jewish students and professors that they are not welcome to walk freely on campus.
So then could you just do us a favor and get out of here?
No. What are you doing here? I mean, this is a public space. People are allowed to be here as long as they obey university regulations. You guys are the ones who are not obeying regulations. You're the ones who should leave.
Listen, you can have a request, but I have the right to walk freely on my own campus.
And we have the right to say no to your request.
Yeah, I have the right to walk freely through my campus, so please, I'm not trying to put you. I'm not.
Please let us go. Please do not physically block anyone. This is public space.
Yeah, so as the state's chief law enforcer, as the attorney general, as someone who wants to be the governor, as one of the most high-profile alums of the University of Washington, you would think that Bob Ferguson would be all over that, just as he would if it was right-wing neo-Nazi and hatred. We've covered that. You'd think that he'd be coming out daily with statements saying, this is not acceptable. You cannot block the movements of Jewish students, of any professors. But particularly when you're there protesting against the right of Israel to exist. You cannot, as we saw on video yesterday, rip a Israeli flag out of a student's hand and rip it to shreds and light it on fire. This isn't hard stuff to say. And it's also not hard stuff to say without giving the regular qualifier that Bob Ferguson and other Democrats give of, we can't tolerate anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, because they have to lump it together, because they can't risk, just standing up for Jewish people. They have to also say, and Islamophobia. Have you seen an instance of Islamophobia in the news on UW's campus? I haven't. I sure haven't. Interesting. So now the wonderful, timely advice from the Attorney General's office. All the credit to Ari Hoffman, our friend over at KVI, who has been all over this as a Jewish American. It absolutely disgusts him. And so he followed up with the Attorney General's office. Here's his article from the Post Millennial. It says, Ferguson's spokesperson, Brianna Aho, was asked by the Ari Hoffman show if the AG's office would respond to concerns from Jewish students on UW's campus. And in response, she sent a link to a hate crimes hotline. Okay, so, report it to the hate crimes hotline if you feel like you're a victim of a hate crime. Here's the caveat. The hotline doesn't go live until July of 2025. Oh, bummer. Okay. So maybe in a year, the Jewish students and that Jewish professor can call that hotline and report that they were the victim of a hate crime. Aho did not respond when asked what the students were supposed to do in the meantime, since the hotline is not active and likely won't be for over a year. And just a little bit of background on this hotline, which we've talked about on the show, which I think is completely meaningless because there's a hotline if you're the victim of a crime. It's called 911. The creation of the hotline was made law via Senate Bill 5427, which passed the Democratic-controlled state House. It read that the Attorney General's office, quote, shall oversee a hate crimes and bias incidents hotline staffed during business hours and dedicated, you can only call during business hours, so God forbid, and dedicated to assisting people who have been targeted or affected by hate crimes and bias incidents. The hotline is intended to, quote, identify local service providers and culturally specific services to assist, quote, historically underserved communities, and create an advisory committee with, quote, diverse and inclusive representation to provide support. A majority of Republicans opposed the bill. A 2023 version of the bill included a provision for $2,000 in compensation per person targeted or affected by a specific hate crime or bias incident. That $2,000 compensation, thank God, did not get passed as part of Senate Bill 5427. So the underlying problem here is, instead of strong rebukes from the Attorney General's office, which shouldn't be an issue at all, Ari Hoffman shouldn't have to beg for it. I shouldn't have to call him out for it. This should just be expected stuff. It's very odd that he can't just do it, especially when he's on social media this week tweeting about the Holocaust. It's like, maybe at the same time you take a firmer stance on what's happening in the United States and around the world right now. But maybe that's asking too much. So you're going to tell these students, call a hotline that doesn't even exist right now, not even up and running, while you simultaneously are an absolute coward over this whole thing. And even if the hotline were running, the hotline is not going to do anything. The hotline is not going to do any good. I've already said why I'm opposed to the hotline in general. One, you call 911. Hate crimes are against the law, obviously. Hate crime. It's a crime. So you call 911. Now they wanted to use the hotline to be able to connect people to resources who didn't maybe want to file a police report or seek charges on something. Or maybe it was just a microaggression. Wasn't even a full-blown hate crime. And they just need help and resources and someone to help them through the microaggression that they suffered in America. And so I think it's a little bit worthless. But also, they're just going to use this to track people. Like, I'm sorry, somebody's going to call and say, Brandi said something, racist on her podcast. Then I'm going to end up in some government database where I've been accused of a hate crime. They're going to use it to track people and all this stuff. And so I just think it's a little bit, and also what they're going to use it for. This might be the most important thing, and I'm glad I didn't forget. They're going to use it as a way to artificially inflate hate crime numbers. Because they're going to say, oh, hate crimes are up 600% in Washington state. Well, it's because they made a hate crimes hotline. And people can call the hate crimes hotline, and it doesn't mean that their case is investigated or that there's even evidence of a hate crime. They just call the hotline. So then you have the AG's office, and they're going to say, hate crimes in Washington state are up 600%. We've got to put more money to this. We've got to dedicate more resources. And then they got the DEI departments. Come on, people. Come on. Oh, my God, my tinfoil hat is showing. But it's true. Am I wrong? So anyway, yes, to the Jewish students at the University of Washington who are not being allowed to move around freely, just hold your horses, okay? Just put that in your pocket. Put that, bias incident in your pocket and call the hate line in July of 2025. Easy. Easy. Thank you, Bob Ferguson. You'll make a great governor.